Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited to talk to my guest today. I have networked with her, oh my gosh, for maybe a year. I don't know, maybe longer than that, maybe a little bit shorter than that. COVID time just, but I have wanted to get to know her because from her contributions in these networking events, I'm just absolutely fascinated. And so I was so delighted to be able to welcome AdaPia Derico to our program today. Welcome, AdaPia.
Hi, Deb. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're going to have so much fun, but let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So AdaPia Derico is a passionate and visionary leader with extensive experience across countries, cultures, and companies. She's co-founded businesses, launched brands, and defined industries, and has reinvented herself many times during her 20-plus year career. AdaPia is passionate about empowerment from spiritual to financial. She is an international author, powerful keynote speaker, and sought-after voice in entrepreneurship, capital raising, and enlightened leadership. AdaPia is a principal at Alpha Investing, a boutique real estate private equity firm, a partner at Cloudfire Capital, a cryptocurrency asset manager, and a venture investor and advisor. So, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you were able to even fit us in with all that. Well, as I mentioned, we are part of a networking group called Leadership Global. Fantastic group. And it's interesting because in the past, I have hesitated about being a part of all women organizations. Mm-hmm. And for the men who are listening, don't tune us out. We've got great information for you. Plus, you've got fabulous women you need to be thinking about in your life. But I've recently joined two groups that are predominantly women, if not 100% women. And one of the things that I have found is the support level is so very different because it's much more supporting from the heart and the soul, as opposed to what can you do for me? Where's that bell that you're going to ring to sell me business? And so I think that's one of the reasons why I was so looking forward to speaking with you, because that is very much what is important to you, is kind of that combination of the heart, the soul, the head, to really be true to yourself. So, I mentioned in your bio how many things that you have done. You're truly one of those left brain, right brain Renaissance people. But tell us how you got to where you are today and how you discovered that for right now, this is your passion in life.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. That was, so well said about, I do want to touch on quickly on the women's side of things. And it wraps a little bit into my story too, because I would say, like, from a young age, I always got along with men or boys better than I did with women, because I tended to embody more of the masculine traits, right? I was ambitious. I was very action oriented. I like success. I wanted a career from a very young age, but in business. That was, after I got over my marine biologist, paleontologist phase when I was like 5 or 6, I wanted to go into business. And, I really wanted my dad to be proud of me, if you will. But for some whatever reason, I always got along with boys better than I did with girls. I didn't really care about dolls and however that went. So it took me a really long time. Like, it was just maybe in the past, I would say 10 years of my life where I've been able to forge really strong, meaningful connections with women and appreciate the community and the sisterhood that exists there. And it's such a big part of my life now. And I love Leadership Global, and I love to support other women. And so my journey is really that that left right brain, and also honoring the woman in me.
Right.
Because like growing up for me, like growing up in the 80s, I had a sense of what I thought success was, and it was very male dominated, male oriented. And you know this, there was no room for soft skills. Like,
right. Oh yeah. Empathy.
Yeah. No, what's empathy? It was only Daniel Goleman when he came out in like the early 2000s with Emotional Intelligence, that book where it started to be permissible to even talk about emotions at work. And that was now 20 years ago. So we've come a long way, but we get imprinted from such a young age. Right. And so I've totally gone off tangent, but I mean, I guess like where I am and where I've come from, you could imagine. I mean, I was career oriented. That's what I was all about. I started working in a bank when I was 18.
Wow.
Give a sense. Like, and I figured out from that young age that financial independence was what I was really after. I understood the relationship between making a lot of money and what I really wanted, which was freedom and independence.
Right.
I don't like people telling me what to do. And so that I understood from a young age, and I really enjoyed, honestly, I enjoyed the whole industry. So I've had a career that spans a lot of that industry: private equity, hedge funds, insurance, banking. And actually in 2008, I kind of left that world for a while. And I went into entrepreneurship. And that's actually when I discovered I was an entrepreneur. And it should have been obvious, but even then, entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing that people talked about a lot. It's so much bigger today than it was back then. And so I discovered I was an entrepreneur, and I went off in a completely different direction. I actually went into business with my sister, who's an artist, and we built a global brand for her. And I got into, she was an artist, so we got into consumer products and the entertainment industry. And so very different, but I built a business around it, which was unheard of for artists. I mean, unless you're Warhol, you're not allowed. Yeah,
you're the struggling artist until the day you die.
Thank you. Yeah, and I said, not on my watch. This is not happening on my watch. Why can't we monetize her art? And so we did. And so we went and we created this whole business. And it was an interesting time because it was right at the height of the Great Recession. And so we took a big risk. And the risk really was, if you don't show up now, or rather by showing up now, you're going to be the one that has been around and will be remembered when things get back to normal or better. Right. And so that really worked. And we got into making our own prints, like making our own books, making our own merchandise through licensing. So for anyone who knows the licensing world, you license your artwork or a brand or a label or what have you, you get paid for that license.
Right.
So it was marketing that paid us. And I thought that was a great way to do business. And so we did. So that got me, and that world, where I really never thought I would get back into like the full business financial world. But over time, what happened around 2009, 2010, Kickstarter comes along and says, crowdfunding, we're going to make crowdfunding available. And so we started using crowdfunding campaigns for art books and different things that we were doing. Well, in 2013, I heard about crowdfunding that was equity-based.
Oh, okay.
So in 2012, the Jobs Act was signed into law by Obama, and it was the first step in trying to connect investors to opportunities. So it was the idea of saying, invest in the next Facebook.
Right.
And so that really perked my ears up, because that finance side of me said, wait a second, I can turn our fans into shareholders. So I inherently understood that. And so that set me on this whole path when that the whole crowdfunding, actually equity crowdfunding, didn't fully happen until 2016. But what happened as I was doing all of this is I got into the real estate crowdfunding industry.
Mm-hmm.
And on a side note, at that time, my sister and I sort of split. Like I was doing consulting. She wanted to go into a slightly different direction. I moved to LA. So all these things happened. And I got into the real estate crowdfunding industry because I started networking. I started networking here in LA, Silicon Beach, all these like digital LA, all like the startup scene, the venture capital scene that was really starting to pick up. So it was coming down from San Francisco. So I just found that really fascinating because I had this really intuitive kind of a hit. And I said, I think the real estate side of crowdfunding is going to be really big, because everybody knows, I mean, it's sort of one of those things that I think are general knowledge that real estate is how you build wealth. Right. A lot of people know that, like, we know that that's a good way to build wealth, but in the financial industry, that's not something that's talked about. It's really not. It's always
They want you to buy stocks and bonds and do the traditional type of things.
ETFs and everything you have in your 401k. Well, there's a multi-trillion-dollar world of real estate, and the wealth is created and it's maintained. It's tax efficient. There's so many amazing things about real estate. And when I got into it, I thought my whole life at that point, but like the career I had built up in finance had zero knowledge of real estate. And I just found this whole world fascinating. So I got into real estate crowdfunding, helped launch one of the first platforms, became sort of a leading lady in fintech. And that was a burgeoning scene. So I just really like being at the forefront of innovation. And that really got me started on this path. And today I'm a partner in a private equity firm that we invest in commercial real estate, and we help other investors do that through us. And it all kind of came back around. So like this zigzaggy path, this like spiral path, it all makes sense. So I realized like where I land today is that idea of financial freedom and financial independence and empowerment. I never lost that. And now that I have a good 20 years behind me of figuring myself out and where it's all at, and with the new technologies that we have available today, I kind of realized, and this comes back to the women, that there aren't very many women that do what I do.
Right.
That have had
it is still, and I'm putting this in my air quotes for those who are listening, a man's world.
Yes, very much. It is. And to be honest, when we kind of take control of that financial piece and say, you know what, I work hard for my money and I want my money to work hard for me.
Right.
That's a big flip. Like that's a big switch, because women tend to be in the, I'm going to work hard camp. I'm going to work more than I need to. Right. I need to prove myself, all this kind of stuff. And I'm saying we need to make our money work that hard for us. And doing that for myself has taught me so much about myself, about empowerment, about security, about the future. And I want other women to do that. And I'm here to help them do that because I've been doing it. And and that's really exciting for me to create, like a support structure for other women, because I do this like 24 hours a day. This is what I focus on is investing. And so I know how much work goes into it. And I want these other women in these amazing groups and in my community and in my networks to know I'm here to help you do that too. Because it's a big flip to feel that your money's working for you.
Right. Right. Well, and, for someone who is, of the older generation, like me, this is very different than what we were taught. I mean, I'm right at the end of the baby boomer generation. So, there was a little bit of, Leave It to Beaver and all of that I grew up with, but I also grew up and now granted, I have a mother, incredibly independent woman. She was always the one who was in charge of the family finances, all of those various things. And, but you still kind of thought, well, we have to get married. We have to raise a family. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that. But in a lot of cases, we were also taught, like I said, it's a man's world, just turn that over to the men. And, even worse, we were told, girls, don't have a head for numbers.
Yeah.
It's funny. I took college algebra multiple times, not because I didn't pass it. It was because I took it in 8th grade. And then
Wow.
when I got into 9th grade, they said, girls shouldn't be doing that. So they put me back into regular. And so then and there were like 4 of us that, 4 girls, that 4 women, young ladies, who were doing this. I mean, we were just doing this cycle of we jump way ahead, and then the administration would change and say, no, girls can't do that. And finally, the last time they just said, can we just test out of these other things? And, because we took the other classes multiple times too. But yeah, that we were just that generation that, we weren't supposed to be good with numbers. And unfortunately, I think we still see that a lot. When we look at STEM schools and things like that, it's fun to see how young women are now going into things that are like that, and really thinking about, okay, maybe I do want to be married and have kids and or whatever that looks like, but I also want to be strong and independent on my own.
Yes. Oh, so well said. So well said. And I'm going to add some statistics to that. Because, okay, so 1974 is when women finally earned the right to apply for individual credit.
Wow.
We got to think about this, right? Less than half of the women were in the workforce, 1974, and 12% of women were breadwinners for their families. So that was 1974.
Right. And they were that way because they were forced to be.
Right.
They were in a single parent family.
Yes. Yeah. Or they're like, maybe their husband was a dependent for some reason. Maybe they were ill or what have you. Yeah. So, and even still today, there are some women that because of their relationship can't have a bank account or don't have their own bank account. Right. So we still have some work to do. However, from 1974 to today, women control over 60% of the wealth in the US. And they control 85% of consumer spending.
Right. They make those decisions.
They do. They make those decisions. And let me tell you something else. By 2030, the women are expected to have the lion's share in 2030 of $30 trillion of financial assets will be controlled by women. 30 trillion because of this wealth transfer that's happening. And so here's the last piece of that statistic. Today, 40% of women are the breadwinner of their families, up from 12. So we've come a long way. And women like you have really forged that too, because you're coming out of that generation where in 1974, you can even have your own credit score.
Right.
That's a lot, that's a lot of work. But to your point, only most women over 50% would say, and they believe that investing is about knowing math, and it's not. And 59% of women will say that they don't think they're doing a good job of investing. And for the most part, it's because they believe this false limiting belief that they're not good at it from some precondition.
Right. Somebody told us somewhere.
That's right.
No, honey. We get patted on the head, right? Leave that to the guys.
But statistically, women are better investors than men.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because when women invest, they invest totally different.
Yes, they do.
When long ago, when I invest, it was really funny because I bought high tech. For some reason, I liked high risk, but retirement was so far off; it was play money to me. And then figured out, okay, that's really not not what we need to be doing. But I think women now really look more towards the long-term type of investments. They definitely look at, is this company environmentally friendly? Is it diverse? I mean, all of these other things. So it's not just, is buying this stock, is buying this real estate, whatever, is that going to make me money? But what is the impact that company has on their world?
Yeah. Women invest based on their values. And they put family first, they put community first, they invest with a really holistic aspect. And the beauty is with the rise of ESG, so so environmental, sustainable, like governance type of investments, impact investing, it's really been on the rise for the past 10 years. Is that's possible. Plus, because of the crowdfunding legislations that came through, you have certain companies that are venture capital firms that are led by women who invest in women. So you actually have this big movement in venture capital where still only like 3% of venture capital goes to women, which is ridiculous. You think about women are over 50% of the population.
Right. And we're only getting 3%.
Yeah. And who's creating products for us? For the most part, historically, it's been men.
Right.
Like who designed razors? Men. Who does, you know, so in
cars, I mean, all of those things.
All of it. And so there's so many ways for us as women to play to our strengths, which are the values, which are the impact, which is meaningful. And we take a longer term view. Now, I think you and I are probably anomalies in the sense that we're higher risk. I'm pretty high risk.
Right.
You know, I'm like, oh, where's the technology? Where's the future? Like I started investing in Bitcoin in 2013. So it was like, I was like very precocious.
Yeah. And I see, I don't do Bitcoin and I don't do crypto. I mean, you know, that's too play money for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's, you know, there's meme coins and there's some crazy things out there for sure. But, you know, most women are very risk averse, and that's not a bad thing. There's plenty of risk.
Because they want to save the money because they've got kids, they've got whatever.
Yeah. And the one thing, it's not bad to be risk averse because there's plenty of ways to invest in a way where your money is safe. However, we can't be risk adverse.
Right.
Completely, because money in a bank account is losing value more and more and more. And so just having a bunch of cash in a bank account might make someone feel safe because it's there. But you know, the value of the dollar has dropped like even 20% in the last 10 years. And $100 in 1913 is worth $3 today. And that's been accelerating. So we have to be really careful about things like inflation and just sitting on cash, because risk is not loss. Like I used to think risk was like, I can't take a risk because it's loss. And I never fully consciously put together the fact that I was taking risk on things that were potentially thought of as high risk, but I was thinking of the risk return profile, which is not always correlated. I mean, there's plenty of things that have a great profile that don't have high risk. I just really tend to like venture stuff. I like to invest.
Hey, they're kind of more fun, right?
Yeah, they're kind of fun. They're really good. And I love investing in founders that are doing something to change the world, because I'm not that person. But I love to back people that are really doing meaningful work in the world. So, you know, all of this said, like there's so many opportunities, and a lot of it starts with an inner reflective kind of inventory of what are my beliefs about money? What are my beliefs about my ability to invest? Or is it about math? Or like, and something I always tell people, and I always say to myself is that belief mine? Like, did I come up with that? Do I believe that about myself? Or did somebody tell me that about me and I internalized it?
Right. And that truly is what has happened most of the time. You know, and I want to do a quick plug for your book, which is, and hold it up. You have to be Vanna, because I just have the digital copy. So it's Productive Intuition. I have to get closer to my screen to read it. Connecting to the Subtle. And what, you've got worksheets in it and all of these things to really make you stop and think, what is it about these and where did those beliefs come from? You know, some of them, we really did just grow up with them. You know, one of the things, and now this still really bothers me, the fact that we don't teach simple, basic things in school, like here's how to have a bank account. You know, and granted, I mean, some kids nowadays don't have bank accounts. I mean, you know, they have money in different ways. They, you know, all these various things which just baffles me. I mean, you know, every once in a while I do have to write a check for something. I mean, I go through like 20 checks in a year. But every once in a while you do have to write a check for something. But I mean, part of that too is that people have Venmo. They have all of these, you know, other ways that they can pay bills or, you know, buy things. But yeah, a lot of this just really came from, and I think in many cases, it really did come from watching not our parents, but our mothers. How did they handle money, and what was that relationship?
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it's very true. The education piece, I think, is fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself fortunate
Mm-hmm.
that I decided to go into
Mm-hmm.
financial
Right.
major and career when I was
Mm-hmm.
so young, because it served me very well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of news and a lot of headlines and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of statistics that show that people, I think the average American has less than $5,000 in savings average,
Right. Mm-hmm.
which means the
And that was
mean is much
pre-COVID.
lower. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I often think about, like, my husband, for example. He didn't grow up with an understanding of money
Mm-hmm.
or debt, especially not debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were very different coming into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it challenging at times.
Mm-hmm.
It really made it challenging at times. But to your point, and he'll often say to me now, he said, why didn't anybody teach me
Right.
about even just a bank account? Because my mom did. I remember. And this,
I remember going with my mom to the bank.
yes, me too. And we would
Mhm.
stick the little savings book in. At
Oh
that
yeah, you got the
time,
little book.
you get a little print it out, and because it was like double digit interest at the time, so you would see like your money.
Oh yeah,
and that made me so happy.
Mm-hmm.
It made me so happy. It was like, I just don't know. It was like a little dopamine hit to see these like little lines printed out and the number going up. And so, yeah, we would go to the bank. You just have an understanding. My parents are immigrants, and my mom, my mom definitely grew up in poverty. And so we would always clip coupons, and she taught frugality. She taught saving. She taught me a lot of things so that I didn't have student loans by the time I graduated. Like, I paid them off within a year, what I had left.
Wow.
Yeah. And so all of this, you're right. A lot of it stemmed from my mom, and then making that decision. The financial education piece, my hope is that, you have some teachers that will be able to have I don't have kids, so I don't know. I think YouTube is a great place. I think parents are a great place.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't have kids either. And so, it's from my friends that I'm hearing things, I mean, like, now, yes, I am the generation before you. And so we had home ec, we had shop, we had some things like that. And, now they are seeing the benefits of teaching the trade type of things in schools, because, not everybody can go off and be a physicist. We need the plumbers, we need the, all of those things. And in many cases they make more money than those physicists. So, it is, I think it's coming back around where, schools are seeing the benefit of those basic skills that they're teaching to kids.
Yeah. Really important. Like, I hope that, anyone listening that's a parent has even basic conversations. The most important one to me is actually debt and the use of debt, because not understanding
debt is not a bad thing. I mean, that's one of the things that people it's funny. They either think it's horrible and awful and you shouldn't ever have it. Or they're like, yeah, whatever. And True. I mean, a lot of people don't understand debt is how you get better credit. I mean, just a variety of things, and financing some things and then being responsible about it is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a tool. It's a tool that can really help. And just like a lot of things can easily be abused. And to your point, if it's misunderstood, if you misunderstand how credit card interest accumulates, and what it means when you're making your minimum monthly payment long term, like those are things that, or even the, student loans are a big issue these days, and really understanding the benefit of, to your point, like, are you going to amass a $200,000 student loan bill to go into a job or a trade that, or not a trade rather, but some kind of job where you're not going to be able to pay that back? Or are you really, like, are you going to get an MBA and then know that you're going to go be a management consultant starting at like 250 a year and then paying it back, or doctors. But there are plenty of people that my husband's an example. He had a lot of student loans. And he went and he was in an architecture, and coming out of school, coming out of a master's in architecture from one of the best schools in the US. He was hired out by one of his professors at $15 an hour. And I was like, are you joking me right now?
Now they pay that at McDonald's, right?
I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So those are sort of different kinds of calculations. And now, I mean, he's worked through, does incredible work and is doing very well for himself, but really had to forge his career away from architecture, actually, because it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And there's plenty of degrees and there's plenty of jobs that are like that. And so we gotta be really careful. I think we just gotta be really careful, because that can make or break someone's ability to own a home, to be able to save appropriately for retirement, and to feel, because here's the thing, it's not just the numbers, right? It's not just like savings and the amount of money that you have in the bank. It's how you feel about yourself. It's how you feel about your possibilities. It's like how you feel. Do you feel free, or do you feel burdened? Do you feel living paycheck to paycheck, or do you feel like powerful because you're solid? And to me, that solidity, financial solidity, at least for me, is really important, because in moments in my life when I have not had that, I was almost incapable of performing, because I was so worried.
Yeah, you do. You get so caught up in the what ifs.
Yes. Yeah. And then boom, I couldn't function, because I was so worried all the time that I couldn't perform at my best. And if I'm not performing at my best, and here's the spiral, if I'm not performing at my best,
you're not going to make what you could. And
correct. Yeah. And then so it's a really important thing to know about ourselves, because we also don't maybe realize how much of our mental energy is going into these thoughts that are at the back of our mind, and we can't concentrate, and we're distracted, and we're worried, and not just money, but everything. And and I appreciate you telling people about the book, because that's a big part of it. When I think about intuition and productivity, is how much we don't listen to that inner voice that's always right. We're like, it's in there going
for a reason.
Yeah. And we say, oh no, because our mind or our ego wants something different. No, I'm not going to listen to that, because it's counterintuitive. It's not counterintuitive, but it's counter to what maybe the ego wants, because your intuition, your inner self is saying like, this is not good for you. But you really want it for whatever reason, you really, really want it. And then of course it blows up. And then there's other times when your intuition is saying, do this. And you're thinking, this is crazy. What, this doesn't make any sense to my rational mind.
Yeah. I have bills I have to pay, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And yet that decision to follow that impulse leads to some of the best things that have ever happened to you. And so the invitation from my perspective is to integrate the two, like, not saying the left rational brain is bad. I mean, my goodness, like I use it every day.
We need that brain.
Yeah. I can't live without my rational mind. However, I also live much better when I integrate my right brain, when I integrate my intuition, when I listen to it, and when I take a lot of time to sit and reflect and to contemplate and to really get to know what my values are before I do anything, and not just what I think I'm supposed to do or society tells me to do, which kind of wraps back around to what we were saying, at the beginning there about what have others told us who we are, what we're supposed to do, what we're good at, like all of that's up to us to decide.
Right. And one of the things that we have been taught is wealth is bad. Ooh, rich people. Ooh, and there are some, obviously, that wealth is bad. But one of the things that you say is wealth in the right hands changes the world. And it's been interesting. I'm a space geek. I'm one of those people, I love Star Trek. I love Star Wars, all those things. And so when William Shatner went into space, I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. But I've also seen so many people who've said, those rich people should not be spending their money that way.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me agrees with that. I really do stop and think, how many people could they be feeding? All of these various things. But then the other part of me says they earned it. They should be able to do what they want with it. But it is, and so that's where our brains get all caught up. And then what happens is we don't do anything.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That analysis paralysis. I've had that so many times too. And it's hard because I struggled with that for a long time. I really judged myself and struggled because I know I'm a good person. I'm a good person. My intentions have always been pure, but I allowed those voices of like, oh, wealthy people are bad people and they're all greedy and they're all power hungry. That's not true. I've met so many incredibly wealthy people, so many that are just the most generous,
right?
The warmest, like and they earned their wealth or they managed their wealth and they know what they're doing with it so that they have a lifestyle and they give however much to charity, or a lot of them have endowments or foundations. And some of them are inherited, and that's their lot in life. I'm going to hold that against them. And the thing is, like, there's always bad apples everywhere, right? There's always bad apples. But until I faced my own demon around essentially like a form of judgment and envy, because it's really what it comes down to. Like, yeah, I would love to have enough money where I could do whatever I want, but but we all do. But in reality, to have that much money and maintain it is a lot of work.
Right.
It's not just, oh, you have a bunch of money and then they're spending it all. No, they have the financial plan, they have investments, they have things allocated. Like, just like me, I have my fun money allocated. I have my vacation money allocated. I take vacations. I do nice things. And if I were to think through how many people are not as fortunate as me, and I shouldn't take a vacation because there's people poorer than me, well, I'm never going to live. Right. I'm going to be guilty and ashamed. And I don't believe that I was put on this earth to feel that way just for following a path that I followed. And so I hear you so much on that. It's such a difficult one, because the empathy that we have and the compassion that we have, especially in the face of suffering, really ratchets up, but we can't let that get in the way of our own joy.
Right. Right. It's funny you mentioned endowment, and you'll love this story. So mentioned we don't have kids. And so a couple of years ago, we formally did our wills. We'd been I had one when I got sick and some things like that, but we went to the lawyer, we paid, we did the fancy stuff. And so we created trusts and planned giving back to the university that both my husband and I went to. And, these, you have to fill out the forms and tell them this is what it is. And of course they take it as the value of that day. What it is. And so, all those various things. And so, if you add in life insurance, all those things, we all of a sudden became major donors, which I just find absolutely hilarious. But, and so we were talking to one of the folks there that I've known for a very long time. And I said, I am just curious about this. I said, because if we live a really long time and enjoy ourselves, the university might get $1. If we die today, they get a lot. And he looked at me and he said, "We wish for you a long but frugal life." And of course they realize that the present value is not what the future value is. Could be more, could be less. For a variety of reasons. But I just thought that was so funny, because he was in essence saying you still need to do what you want to do. It's great if the university gets something, but you can't just stop living your life, as you said, because we're thinking, oh my gosh, they have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. What a great story. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you're even thinking about
Mhm.
that is like, that's the thing, is that that's a part of the giving back,
Mhm.
right? Is the, hey, like,
Mhm.
I feel fortunate.
Mhm.
I'm going to find a way to give back.
Mhm.
And, um, that, I mean, it's just part of like how we're built. But
Mhm.
yeah, but I like the live long and frugally,
Yes.
because I feel the same way. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of people, I talk to a lot of people and they say, oh, I don't have money. I'm a six figure, I'm a
Mhm.
six figure earner, multiple six figures, and I
Mhm.
live paycheck to paycheck, which is true of a lot of people,
Right.
especially millennials.
For a
Um,
variety of reasons. Mhm.
for a variety of
Mhm.
reasons. One of the easiest ways to find that money is actually to like look at your expenses, because you're
Mhm.
spending on
Yeah.
things you don't
Mhm.
know you're spending
Mhm.
on, like subscriptions. And
Mhm.
oftentimes like there's really easy ways to make little cuts.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you see that you
Mhm.
have like, oh,
Right.
I actually have
I
quite a
know.
bit of money.
COVID forced us to do that. Wasn't it funny? I mean, one of the, so like two examples, gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
I gassed up one time in 3 months.
Wow.
So yeah, saved a lot of money there. Now, what we were doing was just driving one car as opposed to driving both cars. And so the other car, we were gassing up
Yeah.
fairly often. And then just the fact that in the last 20 months now, I have been to Starbucks 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of money. I mean, when you figure up once or twice a week, 5, 6, eight
Yeah.
bucks every single time. I mean, that truly does add up. And we can be going to Starbucks again. No,
Yeah.
we've gotten out of that habit. But
Yeah.
yeah, just finding those little things that you
Mm-hmm.
don't even think about. And like you said, those subscriptions that you sign up for. And I know I'm guilty of this. There are things that both business and personal, it's like, yeah, we might need ESPN Plus at some point. So we're just, because it's only $4.99 a month.
Yeah.
But if you have a whole bunch of $4.99 a month, it adds up.
It does.
And so yeah, I mean, it's just little things like that, but it really does make a big difference. Even something as simple as your cell phone plan.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Yeah. It's a really good idea to take a look
Mhm.
at those kinds of things
Mhm.
regularly and ask your service
Mhm.
providers, like, do you have a discount?
Right.
Like, one of the things that I actually found out as I moved last
Mhm.
year, and so we had to disconnect and like reconnect, is that
Mhm.
if you try to leave a service,
Mhm.
they lure you back with free service.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
So like,
Mhm.
maybe we should all regularly like threaten to leave
Mhm.
our internet
Oh, I
providers
know
so that they
people who
give
do
us
that like
free.
every 3 months. They switch.
I mean, it's a lot of work, but I mean, like, you could do it that way. But in general, like, I mean, it's a really good practice. It's a
Mhm.
really good practice to know where you're spending your money and to total that up. Like, oh gosh, I really spent a lot of money on supplements. Like,
Mhm.
I have, I take different
Mhm.
supplements. And so I
Mhm.
actually spend quite a bit of money on
Mhm.
supplements and food. That's important to me. My
Mhm.
health is really important to me.
Mhm.
And so I'm willing to spend on that.
Right.
And then there's other things that I don't need to spend
Mhm.
on. And so I have those
Mhm.
trade-offs. Like, I kind of do the same thing with
Mhm.
calories, like sugar. I'm like, well, I'm going to
Mhm.
save my sugar for my ice cream, so
Right.
like kind of like things like that. So I have like a level of impulse control, which is
Mhm.
actually one of those emotional intelligence points,
Mhm.
is like something called like impulse control.
Mhm.
Over time, whether or not we have impulse control over time, though, like, having a view into our expenses or
Mhm.
our consumption, and our values, like if something's aligned, like the
Mhm.
health, the
Mhm.
supplements and the food is aligned to a value of
Mhm.
mine. I'm like, very, for me, like being healthy
Mhm.
physically, because I have an autoimmune disorder,
Mhm.
so I have a lot to deal with. Like,
Mhm.
it's better for me to spend more on my food and
Mhm.
supplements
Right. Mhm.
than to have
It's
to.
almost a healthcare cost.
It is,
Mhm.
exactly correct. It's a
Mhm.
healthcare cost that's not
Mhm.
covered by healthcare.
Mhm. Right.
But
I know
but
the HSA doesn't work there. Mhm.
no, it doesn't. I mean, that would be interesting if they ever
Oh.
went there.
Mhm.
But because that's a whole other discussion,
Mhm.
right? Like health, like, it's not
Mhm.
it's not medication. There's like so
Mhm.
much more to it. But again, it requires the going in and the
Mhm.
understanding of who we
Mhm.
are, and all of that put together. I think where I was trying to go with that, because I totally went off on that health tangent, is really that the awareness around
Mhm.
anything, to me,
Mhm.
self-awareness, cornerstone of
Right.
leadership. So am I aware of what I'm eating? Am I aware of my energy levels? Am I aware of what I just said? Am I aware of my beliefs? Am I aware of my values? Am I aware of my finances? That's all part and parcel of the same thing. And to me, it's all a practice. And I've just found so much stability for myself in being more dedicated to paying more attention, because where we get taken advantage of, quote unquote, air quotes, is the mindlessness, the mindless spending, the mindless eating, mindless anything. And then all of a sudden it's the end of the day or it's the end of the month and we don't understand how we got there. It's because we haven't been paying attention.
Right. You know, and it's easy to not pay attention.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we stop and think about it, then we're like, I just ate how many cookies? And then the guilt comes in, and things like that. And so we just do, but I mean, that's obviously why we have people who have addictive problems, why we have people who are hoarders, why we have people who aren't in jobs that they like, and granted, sometimes we've all been there, right? We take a job because we have to pay the bills, but it is about, and it's funny, I read this and I don't remember if it was on your website and in your book, that we should be devoted to our career, kind of along the lines of we really enjoy it. We love it. We want to spend time doing it. And there are times where it is just, oh my gosh, I got to take whatever I can to pay the bills. Yeah. But at some point, we need to back to your self-awareness. We need to be aware of why are we working there? Is it just to pay the bills? Yeah. Okay. Then can that change? Maybe not. But and so when I hear people say, I hate my job, my first instinct is to say, well, why are you still there? But that's just really judgy. So I try to not do that. But it is that self-awareness thing. Why are we making those decisions? And then not to, heap ourselves with guilt, to say, oh my gosh, why did I just have that fourth piece of cake? Maybe
I know why, because I like it.
I know, and okay, tomorrow I'll work out harder. I mean, things like that. And so it's not to feel guilty and make ourselves feel bad, is to recognize, okay, we can own this and we can do better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to go back to it for me, it's very much about, we can have that same awareness with our finances, and especially like for those, and much of your audience, entrepreneur, really hardworking business people, is your money working that hard for you? Right. It takes a bit of upfront work to understand that, but it's a very important piece of your sustainability and your wellness long-term, like financial wellness is a big piece of why you're working so hard today. And it doesn't have to be something you put off till the future. Oh, let me think about my money in the future. Look, like endowments invest with me because they are making their money make more money so that they have more money to give to the nonprofits. So you also have to be cognizant that the system works in such a way to produce more wealth. And so we all have a right to that wealth. Whether the system is set up in a way where it's harder to do for certain people, I do not disagree. I fully understand. I have been there. And I certainly didn't come from wealth. Like I worked really hard to understand all of this, but it's there for us. And I think it's really important for business people to fully understand what else they're building around themselves to help support the passion that they're putting into their business. So that to me is where it really fundamentally all like aligns. And it's an invitation for business people. I mean, if you don't already like do this, but to really sit and think about, is your money working for you? Like, is it, do you even know your risk profile? Do you know, other forms of investment that have a different correlation? Like, is everything in the stock market? Like, there's so many nuances that takes a little bit of time, but like, you know, when you did your will and your trust, when you got finished with that process, it felt good, right?
It
Like,
did.
I'm sure,
It was a little scary. We were
yeah.
grown-ups.
Yeah. So, you know, so there's a lot of that I think is a real invitation for people to really think about and to get out of, you know, especially for women, but to get out of this mindset that I have to work for my money and to get into the mindset of my money has to work for me.
Right. You know, and it is, you know, as we were saying, you know, going through those steps and thinking about it, you know, the why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? You know, all of those various things. And it's, you know, for some people, they might go, eesh. And I think probably there will be people who do that, who, you know, and I think probably we're going to see that happen in the next year or two with so many people who left the workforce. Yeah. Either, you know, because they had to, or because it was a choice, you know, and started their own business. Great. That's wonderful. But did they do that for the right reasons? And do they really know what they want to do? You know, and I think we're going to see a lot of people who go, you know what, this being an entrepreneur is for the birds, you know, and that's okay. You know, it takes that balance of, you know, the big corporations and the small businesses in order for everything to work.
I agree. And in crisis, there's always opportunity. It just is how you think about it. It's really perspective. When I thought I wanted to be a solopreneur, when I tried that, and you'll appreciate this because it was in 2017. I basically had burnout. I burned out. And that's when my sort of big spiritual awakening also began. And I thought I want to put myself in service. So I wanted to be a coach for women. And man, was that not a good experience for me. It was not good. And when I finally admitted to myself that it's not what I wanted to do, and I admitted to myself that I am an entrepreneur, but that I like working with others, and that I admitted that I wanted to go back to the financial industry that I had left in such a huff, as though it had like done me wrong.
Yes, it had done you wrong.
Just like, oh, bad. Like it was so funny. It's so funny for me to review that mental process that I went through. When I finally admitted to myself, this is not for me. And I admitted what I loved and found those values and aligned and went back to and then everything aligned for me to be so successful now. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay to start a business that doesn't work. It's like failure equals feedback. Like that's a really big point you just made. Like it's not for everyone. It's okay. Try it if you will. Why not try now? Not the end of the world if it doesn't work out. You learn so much about yourself. Take that, whatever you've learned, and go apply it to the next thing that you're going to try.
Yeah. You might figure out that you're going to be a great manager at a company because you've got those leadership skills, all of those things, but you don't want the responsibility that comes with some of that. I mean, you know, every time I have to sit down and do invoices, I'm like, you know, and it's just one of the, you know, yes, we have to do invoices and we, you know, all those things, but I'm just like, really? You know, and I figured out how to automate them. Oh my gosh. You know, it only took me 20 years to figure out how to do that. But yeah, you know, when we go through those failures and learn from them, I think that's when things, you know, as you said, really start to line up and clarify.
Yeah. It's true. That's been my experience with all the different ventures that I've had. And it feels good. It took a long time. Feels like it took a long time for me, but to land where I've landed, I wouldn't have been able, I don't think I'd be where I am today and feeling so strong and feeling so confident about what I'm doing if I hadn't gone through all of the bad things, the bad, I say quotes, right? Air quotes bad, but the things that I perceived as failures, but I perceived them that way at the time because I had so much of my identity invested in what I wanted to be.
And what somebody was going to say.
Oh, whoever they are. I don't know who they are.
I know.
Right?
Who cares?
Who cares? I know. Let them go. And that's a big part of it. And I know that they say when women turn 40 that a lot changes in terms of like how much you care about people, about what people think, or basically you don't anymore. Certainly has been true for me. Definitely changed in when I turned 40. There's a real shift there. And I think it just really, I don't know if it's an age thing as much as it is, you've gone through enough at that point, especially as women, like we've gone through enough at that point where we're like, you know what, I'm going to start doing things for me. Cause I know who at 40, I feel like at 40, I really started to know who I am.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the point where, if you had kids, they're pretty well established and might be even off on their own. If you didn't have kids, you're like, okay, we just go on with the next part of our life. That was certainly for me. And you kind of look at it and go, and back to what I was saying at the very start, that's, somewhere around in there is also about the point where you really start thinking who you want to be on your team, so to speak. And I think it is hard, and it's, let's be honest, it's real hard right now because of COVID. But, some of the relationships that I have made within the last 2 years have been absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Like you. I mean, you and I may never actually meet face to face.
Yeah.
But we don't need to, and so as we learn to adapt to things, and I think maybe that's where women are better, because we're like, okay, now what? Okay, now we go down this path, because we are just kind of used to having to do that. The whole pivot thing. Yeah. We just like whatever, and so, and I think that really does, we're just flexible, it's like, okay, well that didn't work. So now we have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are good with guilt.
Level. Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, so on the good side, like we're really good with the resilience piece, like really good with the resilience. And the flip side of that is what you just said, is that we tend to carry a lot of guilt. And I would invite women, especially right now, to eliminate the selfish, because that's another thing that we've been told, not to be selfish and to put other people first. That is just one of the most detrimental things, I think, that we believe, that other people come first, and that we're bad if we don't put others first, because we can't fully express the totality of what we're capable of if we're always putting our energy outside of us. We just cannot. How can you need that for yourself? Doesn't make you bad. Doesn't mean you don't care. Right. That doesn't mean you don't care. Like that was a big lesson for me, was I really need to think of myself first. And when I gave myself all of that, I discovered that I had so much more to give, that it was like a well that never ran dry, because I allowed myself to take care of myself and to focus on myself first and what I needed and my values, and state those values with others, whether it was my husband or my business partners or the groups or people. And then I made myself strong. And then from a strong place, I could go help others. Right. And so I know it's really hard, because I was like, oh, I have to be somebody for something else. But really the invitation is you're not selfish. Right. If you're trying to do what's best for you.
Right. I mean, I can't take credit for this. Somebody else said this. It's like the airplane, they tell you when the mask drops down, put your mask on first before you help someone else.
Yep, absolutely. And then we can take that a step further and say, before it needs to be an emergency, what if you're the pilot of the plane? Right. But you know what you're doing. You're so strong. You're so capable. You're flying all those people home so that you never need the mask at all. Right. And that's where I think we need to get to, is like, we're in the driver's seat. And so in order to do that, we need to take care of ourselves.
Right. Right. So, oh my gosh, we are at the top of the hour. This has been so much fun. So this is why I set the timer, because I know that, an hour from now, we'd still be going. For people who, are saying, okay, I need help. You know?
Yeah.
How do they connect with you, and what are the services that you provide? We've talked about your book,
Yeah.
which is Productive Intuition.
Mhm.
And so, that's a great resource, but how do people connect with you, and what are the services that you provide?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. So you can just search AdaPia,
Mhm.
ADAPIA.
Mhm.
I will show up first. I think I'm the only
I think you're the
AdaPia.
only one.
I think I'm the only one on
Mhm.
LinkedIn. There might be a couple more in the world, but so just connect with me on LinkedIn. And the services that I provide are commercial real estate investments
Mhm.
for high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals, qualified purchasers, so
Mhm.
endowments, like we talked about. So it's a totally different asset class, but a
Mhm.
really important one for building wealth. I'm going to be launching in January a wealth mastermind and
Ah.
investment club for
Mhm.
women. So
Mhm.
taking all of this stuff that we talked about
Mhm.
today and really actionable strategies and
Mhm.
looking at investments and talking about whether it's cryptocurrency
Mhm.
or real estate or other things that are helping women to put that money to work
Mhm.
for them and really own that portfolio
Mhm.
essentially for that financial independence. So
Mhm.
those are some of the services. I'm always happy to speak with anyone that maybe has some other questions. And that's about it. So just come find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. And, as we mentioned, the book is great. It's got worksheets, it's going to walk you through this process. I didn't make it through, so I'm going to have to go back and finish that, but I'm looking forward to doing that. And so that will be great fun. Um, this really has been absolutely fascinating, and we have to do it again because, like I said, we just started this chat,
Yes.
but do you have any final thoughts for everyone?
I think a final thought, and this is for men and women, because I know we spent a lot of time, speaking from the female
Mhm.
perspective, is, I'll peg this one back to my book, which
Mhm.
is trust yourself.
Mhm.
Like when you are over rationalizing or overthinking, I mean, you know what that feels like when your mind
Mhm.
is going crazy. Take a moment to stop and drop into your heart, like drop
Mhm.
into your body and really know that there's a part of
Mhm.
you that's a very deep, wise, very wise part of you that has the answers. And so my invitation to everyone in this crazy whirlwind world that we're in is to know that you have the answers that you need anytime.
I love it. I love it. Well, I've been having an absolutely fascinating discussion with Adapia Dorico. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.